There is a version of you that thinks more clearly, feels more steadily, and moves through difficulty without being swallowed by it. That version is not waiting for better circumstances. It is waiting for better ideas. Philosophy has been quietly offering those ideas for thousands of years, not as abstract puzzles for academics, but as tools forged from the raw material of human suffering, confusion, longing, and resilience. 10 of the most useful are gathered here, not to overwhelm you with theory, not to turn you into a scholar, but to give you something you can actually use, starting today inside the life you already have. The first concept is Amor Fati, love of fate. Nietzsche, who drew deeply on ancient Stoic thought, described Amor Fati as not merely tolerating what happens to you, but actively choosing to see it as necessary. This does not mean pretending that pain is pleasant or that loss is secretly a gift. It means stopping the war against reality, the exhausting, invisible war that drains so much of your mental energy every single day. When something painful or unwanted arrives, the untrained mind immediately asks, "Why is this happening to me?" Amor Fati asks a different question entirely. What can this become? The shift sounds small. Its effect on your emotional life is enormous. Every moment spent resisting what has already happened is a moment unavailable for everything else. The second concept is the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who was born into slavery and lived most of his life without freedom, identified what may be the single most practically useful distinction in the history of philosophy. Some things are within your control: your thoughts, your intentions, your effort, your response to what happens. Everything else is not. Other people's opinions, outcomes you cannot guarantee, your body's health over time, the economy, whether you are liked or misunderstood, these lie outside your control entirely. Mental suffering, Epictetus argued, almost always comes from treating uncontrollable things as though they were controllable. You cannot think your way into changing how someone feels about you. You cannot will a diagnosis away, but you can choose what you direct your attention and energy toward. Most people spend the majority of their mental life on exactly the wrong half of this division. The moment you genuinely begin to redirect that energy, the weight of daily life changes. The third concept is eudaimonia. Aristotle used this word to describe the highest form of human well-being, often translated as happiness, but more accurately understood as flourishing. The distinction matters because happiness, as modern culture defines it, is primarily a feeling. It comes and goes. It depends on conditions lining up correctly. Eudaimonia is something different, a way of functioning, a life lived in accordance with your deepest capacities, your values, and your genuine potential. Aristotle believed that human beings flourish not through pleasure alone, but through meaningful activity, genuine relationships, the exercise of virtue, and engagement with something larger than personal comfort. The reason so many people feel quietly dissatisfied despite achieving what they were told they wanted is precisely this: they were pursuing the feeling and missing the function. Emotional thriving is not a destination you arrive at and then maintain. It is a quality of how you move. The fourth concept is impermanence. Buddhist philosophy places impermanence, anicca, at the heart of human suffering, not as a pessimistic observation, but as a liberating one. Everything changes. Every emotional state, every relationship, every version of yourself, every difficulty, every pleasure. When you resist this truth, clinging to what feels good and fighting what feels bad, you amplify suffering considerably beyond what the raw experience itself requires. When you genuinely absorb impermanence, something unexpected happens. Difficult emotions become more bearable because you know they will shift. Good moments become more precious because you know they will not last. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron described this as learning to be comfortable with groundlessness, not the absence of stability, but the recognition that the kind of permanent stability you were searching for was never available in the form you imagined. This is not resignation, it is an accurate reading of how life actually moves, and once you stop expecting otherwise, an enormous amount of unnecessary suffering dissolves. The fifth concept is the examined life. Socrates famously argued that the unexamined life is not worth living. This is often quoted and rarely understood. He was not suggesting that intellectual people live better lives than everyone else. He was making a more specific and unsettling claim, that most human suffering comes from inherited assumptions, unquestioned beliefs, and automatic responses that were never consciously chosen. You were handed ideas about what you are worth, what you should want, what counts as success, what is dangerous, what is shameful, and most of those ideas arrived before you were old enough to question them. The examined life is not about reading philosophy. It is about asking, with genuine curiosity and without defensiveness, why you believe what you believe, why you behave as you do, and whether the story you tell about yourself is actually true or simply familiar. This kind of honest self-inquiry is uncomfortable. It is also one of the most emotionally stabilizing practices available to a human being because it removes the anxiety of living by rules you cannot see and were never given the chance to refuse. The sixth concept is negative visualization. The Stoics called this premeditation malorum, the premeditation of evils. It sounds pessimistic until you understand its function. Rather than imagining worst-case scenarios with dread, negative visualization involves deliberately and calmly considering what you could lose: your health, your relationships, your work, your daily freedoms and comforts, not to generate fear, but to generate genuine gratitude. Modern psychological research on hedonic adaptation shows that human beings rapidly become accustomed to good things and stop noticing them. The new relationship, the better job, the resolved problem. Within weeks or months, the mind adjusts and begins scanning for the next source of dissatisfaction. Negative visualization reverses this process. The philosopher Seneca practiced it daily, asking himself what he would do if he lost everything, not because loss was likely, but because the exercise restored his appreciation for what was already present. Used carefully, this practice produces a quietness and contentment that positive thinking alone almost never achieves. The seventh concept is the Socratic method applied inward. Most people argue with their difficult emotions rather than investigating them. They try to talk themselves out of anxiety, dismiss their shame as irrational, or suppress their anger until it finds another way out. Philosophy offers a more effective approach. When a painful feeling arrives, anxiety, inadequacy, dread, shame, the Socratic method asks not how to eliminate it, but what is actually true here? What assumption is producing this feeling? What evidence supports that assumption? What would I say to someone I love who is experiencing this exact thought? This is not the same as positive self-talk, which typically replaces one unexamined belief with another. It is genuine inquiry, holding the thought up to scrutiny and discovering whether it can withstand honest examination. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which has substantial clinical evidence behind it, is built almost entirely on this Socratic principle. The philosophical roots of your psychological toolkit run deeper than most people realize. The eighth concept is Memento Mori. remember that you will die. This was not a morbid instruction in Stoic and Epicurean philosophy. It was a cognitive tool for clarity and proportion. Marcus Aurelius returned to it repeatedly in his private journals, not to frighten himself, but to restore perspective on what actually mattered. The awareness of mortality, actively held rather than anxiously avoided, has a remarkable effect on how you spend your attention. It shrinks trivial worries. It restores urgency to the relationships and projects that genuinely matter. It dissolves the comfortable illusion that there is unlimited time to begin living deliberately. The psychologist Irvin Yalom, who spent decades working with people facing terminal illness, observed consistently that confronting mortality often produced profound shifts in how people chose to live. Not despair, but clarity and liberation. Philosophy has understood this for millennia. Mortality is not the enemy of a meaningful life. Forgetting about it is. The ninth concept is ataraxia, tranquility of mind. The Epicureans used this word to describe a particular quality of mental peace, not the excitement of getting what you want, but the quietness of having examined your desires and released the unnecessary ones. Epicurus argued that most of what people desperately pursue, wealth beyond sufficiency, social status, admiration, constant novelty and stimulation, does not produce tranquility. It produces dependency. The mind that needs external conditions to be precisely right before it can settle is permanently at the mercy of conditions it cannot control. Ataraxia is achieved not by acquiring more, but by questioning which desires actually belong to you and which were handed to you by a culture that depends on your dissatisfaction to keep moving. This is a radical question in a world that works very hard to convince you that wanting more is natural, inevitable, and the only honest response to being alive. The 10th concept is meaning over pleasure. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, described in his work how even in extreme conditions of suffering, human beings who retained a sense of meaning could maintain psychological resilience in ways that those focused purely on immediate comfort could not. Frankl drew on both his clinical experience and the philosophical tradition of existentialism to argue that the primary motivational force in human life is not the pursuit of pleasure or the avoidance of pain, but the search for meaning. When meaning is absent, modern psychology consistently shows elevated rates of anxiety, depression, and a particular kind of restless emptiness that material comfort does not touch and that no amount of distraction reliably resolves. The question philosophy places in front of you is not how to feel better in this moment, but what you are building your one life around, and whether that structure can hold you during the inevitable difficulties that come with being alive. These 10 ideas are not a checklist to complete and set aside. They are orientations, ways of standing in relation to your own mind, your circumstances, and the unavoidable fact of your existence that, practiced genuinely, produce a different quality of inner life. Not a perfect life, not one immune to pain or loss or failure. A more honest one. A more grounded one, a more deliberately chosen one. Amor Fati does not promise that everything will be fine. It promises that you can stop fighting what is already true and use that energy for something real. The dichotomy of control does not eliminate difficulty. It removes the suffering you were adding to it unnecessarily. Eudaimonia does not hand you happiness. It asks you to build something worthy of your capacities. Impermanence does not take away grief. It puts a frame around it. The examined life does not give you certainty. It gives you integrity.
Negative visualization does not make you pessimistic, it makes you awake to what you already have. The Socratic method does not silence your inner critic, it teaches you to question it rather than obey it. Memento Mori does not frighten you into paralysis, it focuses you. Ataraxia does not demand withdrawal from life. It demands honesty about what you actually need versus what you have been trained to chase. And meaning does not remove the weight of existence. It makes it bearable, sometimes even welcome. Philosophy is not an escape from the human experience. It is the oldest, most sustained attempt to live it more fully. And it has been waiting for you far longer than you know.